My name is Sharon Young. I am the Certification Program Manager for AEMP. Welcome to our program. Our speakers today are experienced equipment management professionals with a wide variety of backgrounds. I'll introduce them briefly. Ken Burke of the Sarans Group is from Canada, and he is currently serving as AEMP's Chairman of the Board. He has worked closely with AEMP's Certification Commission on revising our CEM exam this year, and his support has been vital to improving our program. Todd Perrine of Leslie Equipment in Ohio is an active member of AEMP's Education Committee, helping provide ongoing, high-quality professional education at AEMP's conference events. Paul Kitko of Glen Hawbaker is an experienced equipment manager and is active as a presenter and panelist for AEMP education sessions at our conferences. Jim Shug from FMI is AEMP's Certification Institute instructor. He will be presenting 2 days of professional development workshops to candidates preparing to take their CEM or CESP qualifying exams at our conference events. He leads our discussion today as an introduction to AEMP's renewed Certification Institute. Jim, I'll let you take it from here.
Wonderful. Hey, thanks so much, Sharon. And look, I've got a couple ideas to share. The industry as a whole, I spend my days with and across the industry nationally. So the industry as a whole is facing some phenomenal turmoil. Big macro market level. There's geopolitical instability. There's economic changes, whether or not the Fed is going to raise rates. Talking about Europe cracking down on migrants. Talking about oil prices rising 27% almost in only 3 sessions. Unheard of, unprecedented change. The reshoring of manufacturing coming back here to the United States, is driving construction practices. It's affecting the folks that we put work in place for. We put highways, the infrastructure bills passing, and many of our clients have used research to get into the oil and gas market. There's projected to be $10 billion worth of pipelines in the Midwest and the Gulf Coast under construction, tying North Dakota and Texas to refineries. The rail to support all that. The natural gas pipelines, 15 billion cubic feet per day capability upgrade over in a short period of time. And so the demands continue to raise on the industry, not to mention technological changes. Home for me on weekends is Florida, and Florida, as you know, this week, I was getting on a plane Monday morning when I was reassured the hurricane was not going to hit us. That is really the big hurricane that we operate in. And as equipment managers, I feel that you're operating in the turmoil of a tornado. All those changes are the big macro scope that we face. But then within the equipment management profession, there's a whole lot of other reaction necessary and a lot of change. And so that's really some of what I hope to depict. AEMP, AEM, and thanks to Link Belt for being a sponsor. Phenomenal program coming up here in October out in Cleveland. You're going to hear both from the AEM folks, which is a pretty phenomenal tie to the equipment triangle, something that we believe firmly between the dealers, the manufacturers, and the end users, and how do we continue to strengthen that triangle. And so I think you'll see evidence of that throughout any of AEMP's programs, and it means success. How do we create a win across that whole board? And so we're going to continue this type of discussion at that conference in October. You know, when working with equipment managers, when I get onto the enjoyable side of the equipment management of the business, it brings me back to the days I was in the Army when I got to manage equipment there. So it was always a fun thing to kind of see the latest attachments that are available, the latest changes the manufacturers have made, the latest technology that can impact things. All those things are phenomenal, but it kind of brings us back to ask the question, is equipment management a strategic initiative for you? And all of us kind of say, well, yeah, for me it is, but not my company. Or for my company it is, it's important. The next question is, can you prove it? And I think we'd say some people have a harder time proving it. We think what does really this word strategic initiative mean? Strategic initiative, we've all undertaken, sometimes not by choice, sometimes we've been forced into strategic initiatives. Maybe it's because the company came out of a large strategic planning process. And now all of a sudden we've got some initiatives. I think a lot of strategic initiatives on behalf of equipment managers is you speak a very specific language that the rest of the company may or may not understand. And we have to kind of take that on ourselves. And so the strategic initiative, by definition, and you've got a former president there scratching his head, what does it mean? But it guides direction over the long term. It creates an advantage. It aligns resources, requires investment, requires leadership change and a plan. The change part is usually the toughest. And so the strategic initiative thing isn't something that we just kind of throw out. Anytime we're making massive changes in our equipment fleet or how we manage that fleet, it takes a whole lot of energy, resources, and buy-in. In fact, we need buy-in from the top. We need the leadership to say, hey, operations, you need to start doing these things because here's what's going to gain us as a company. And so this strategic initiative thing often means that we've got to go back upstream and sell the importance of this initiative across the company to get that buy-in. Now, we take those initiatives and then say, all right, how are you as the equipment manager or equipment managers within your organization might be, how are you providing value to your company? And so you are outsourceable, some would argue. And so are you a trusted advisor, or are you just there to raise the flag and say we can't do that? Are you a trusted advisor? So we talk about some of this in the upcoming program, and I often spend time with my clients discussing the details of this and how to change that perception so that equipment management isn't a silo anymore, but it's actually part of the organization. In the Army, we call it a combat multiplier. It's actually multiplying the impact, furthering the success of the operations side of the business. In fact, it should further the success of the financial end of the business. The accounting staff should be able to rely on the equipment management as well. We could make their lives easier to get better data, and they could then also be evangelists for the successful initiatives that we undertake. You got to think also when we look at this, even in the Army, most would argue, but even in the Army, our resources were limited. And so there was a constraint on, we had to maximize how great things were, but somehow we had to minimize the resources we took up. It wasn't unlimited. And so we've got to look at that number 2 bullet is how do we better organize the roles and responsibilities to make sure there's a consistent success rate. And the essence of a business model or a business is not just to be successful once, but to build an organization or a set of systems and people around those systems that can recreate that success repeatedly. This is cool to me because adaptation, the disruption and the disruptive effect that we're seeing across our industry and even outside of our industry is causing every organization to continue to adapt and innovate. And that often means these roles and responsibilities are no longer static. So I'm not going to set my set of roles and responsibilities in place today and have that work forever. More and more companies that we're working with, we've got to kind of re-verify them on a regular basis. These things continue to evolve because technology is impacting things, and so now maybe in the past we never needed a clerk to support the equipment management function. But today, I don't see many very successful organizations that don't have some type of administrative assistant there to help make sure that data is entered so that we can manage the fleet the right way. And for some companies that say 50 years ago we didn't have that, and I ran it myself, we don't need that today. That's a change, and those changes, we've got to realize that the context that we operate in has changed, and it will continue to change. So that number 2 is something that's ever changing, and it's adapting to the influences around us, the technological influences, the demands, and the circumstance that we're in. How do we integrate with how operations runs the business? And this is a real neat, the equipment manager should understand operations as well as operations, and that way you could integrate. And so that's how you could, any one of my customers, I'm trying to understand their need, and then I'm there to kind of provide value by solving that need. And then they're willing to pay me to solve that need. Same kind of thing for equipment management. You're trying to figure out your customer, who's often operations, trying to understand their need, and then you're bringing value to solve that need. And then finally, what are you doing to develop future equipment managers? So look, if I could kind of say, hey, here's 4 major topics that we're going to kind of discuss at the conference coming up and get ideas from a group of folks to network and discuss about. Hopefully, if you take nothing else out of this conference, you have some opportunity here to kind of be introspective. Now, all that sounds easy, but does hard. When you kind of, as I'm working with equipment managers around the country in small pockets and groups of 6 to 8 at a time sometimes, I'll kind of say, hey, what are your responsibilities? And all of these answers have popped up in the past. Everything from I'm record keeper, compliance, I'm part of the strategic planning team, which is something that I shed a tear about. I'm very, very happy to see that, a tear of joy. Financial manager, equipment manager, logistics, there's operations, there's vendor management. Some organizations heap every bit of procurement on the shop. I've seen that happen before. A recent client, they dispatched people too, not only equipment but also people. And so that was, we kind of said, is this the highest and best use for your equipment management team to be managing the people across the company? So this often, as our companies, especially private companies, evolve and get larger, we've got to kind of let go of some of these old roles and responsibilities and figure out what our best use is. And in this slide, more does not mean better. And so we've got to kind of figure out where we're best suited. The demands on equipment manager, and this is maybe a slide, are we an equipment company or are we a construction company? And that's a philosophy that many companies have to wrestle with. Are we here to stockpile equipment and manage equipment only, or is our job to build things? And that really starts to drive some charges, internal charges. And are we operating as a profit center, equipment as a profit center or not? And we start to get into many different, and so all these demands, I mean, there's that poor equipment manager, typically with not enough resources, with a fleet that has not been, it's been underinvested in over the past, say, 6 to 8 years. Once that, the top of the market, we probably weren't doing a ton of reinvestment because we had newer stuff, and then down through the downturn, we've cut back on our budget, as well as, in a way, many companies have cut back on the funding for equipment. And from that, I kind of mean some cases we have not charged our projects for the equipment costs, which means if we're doing that, sometimes it's tough for us to then say, well, what's our budget? Well, we have no budget to fix equipment. And so this poor equipment manager is trying to do it all with not a lot of resources. From a recent working group of equipment managers, I asked them to prioritize that list. And they kind of said, hey, here's their top 3. And fascinating to me, I mean, I've got sitting in front of me the construction equipment guide for the Southeast. And then I've got the well-written, another well-written magazine here, Compact Equipment magazine with their latest edition of different equipment. And we're an equipment-based organization or group of folks, but those top 3 are communication, leading change, and about personnel. And those top 3 challenges, in many cases, don't have to do with wiper seals and hydraulics, which I often found very interesting. It's a bit of a pivot for equipment managers from the traditional how do we manage parts inventory and that. The bottom 3 are down there, was what I expected would have been the top 3. Cost management, inventory management, maintenance management, where now we've got them inverted, where their biggest challenges were communication, implementing and leading change, and personnel-related people. A really interesting insight on how things are changing, and I wish we had a selector switch, some type of grader lever that I could pull. That would be the 14th lever on the cat, whatever it is, grader to pull and make things better, faster, cheaper. But unfortunately, that's some of the demands, and we can't just bury our head in the sand. During the downturn, I think we got away with burying our head in the sand a little bit, or we could hide out just because we were waiting for the hurricane to blow over. Well, now there's an upturn, and I think it's more challenging than ever before, because now still have a lot of limited resources. We have all these demands. We've got a fleet that needs to be reinvested in. We can't fix it all at once. We don't have enough staff, and the company is trying to take off and do record amounts of more work than ever before for the companies that have been able to strategically shift into the right markets. Look, all that is the challenges that I'm seeing across the industry. And so I'm going to turn to these experts and ask them to solve them all. I'm thrilled to have this group on board with this, all very reputable organizations and companies. I want to throw out some questions. What are the biggest challenges facing equipment managers today? You guys want to tackle that one first?
Getting competent personnel, that understand the new technology. There's a real gap in the skill set, as I see it, with the new technology that's out there in the current equipment that's coming online. Even though we talked about Tier 4, especially in the market up here in Canada with the cold weather, we as an industry up here are very ill prepared for the onset of Tier 4, and have educating people is a real issue, including clients, etc., so that they understand that it's a different beast. So personnel is probably our biggest struggle in this area.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Ken. Todd, you're currently with Leslie Equipment, but you came with from one of the larger contractors and one of the biggest fleets in the Midwest, privately owned fleets. I mean, now it's awesome because you actually see both perspectives. Todd, what do you see out there?
Well, one of the things I have to agree with Ken is finding great employees. We spend a lot of time now researching and trying to find the best of the best out there. People that have a willingness to learn and they want to be in the equipment business. Something recently that we've probably recognized is having the right person to train these folks. Training the folks today is probably a little different than it was back when maybe our uncle or our father trained us to work on equipment and take care of equipment. Today you've got a little bit different culture of young people coming out. So finding the right people to spend time with those folks, mentor them, and get them up to speed is definitely a challenge. And again, as Ken said, the technology. We have an equipment fleet of close to 1,000 pieces ourselves. So we find ourselves, along with some of the other folks on the line here today, trying to keep this equipment up and running and properly maintained. And we have a rental fleet, and sometimes we have anywhere from 600 to 800 pieces out on rent at any given time. And to try to maintain and stay up with technology and get that stuff taken care of to manufacturer specifications is something that we strive for and continue to do. So technology, with all that, changing oil on a piece of equipment is not like changing oil on a piece of equipment 10 or 20 years ago. There's other diagnostic checks and things that you have to do with the emissions. And
awesome. Yeah, thanks, Todd. It's I think a great perspective, and I appreciate your sharing that. Paul, what are your thoughts?
Well, Ken and Todd kind of hit the top contenders there. Manpower, to expand a little bit on what they mentioned, it's even hard to find trainable people. And we're down to interviewing for trainable people that have the right skill set and ability to learn to move into these positions, and then work on a development and training program as well as retention. So the manpower, without the people, you're out there spinning your wheels.
Wow.
The communication, you hit that pretty hard in one of your slides there, and that communication kind of builds into their technology as well. They expanded slightly on technology as in repairing and understanding the piece of equipment and how to work on it. I'd like to expand that technology a little bit more into telematics and what we could use out of the new technology to get more efficiency and their uptime out of each unit, along with data management and communication with the field.
I just had a very large general contractor client, and part of their developmental process, the gentleman they're grooming to be the next CEO, they've evolved, they rotated him in to become the chief information officer. And here's as operational a guy as I've ever seen, field-oriented, and yet their thought was the industry overall is getting so technology-driven that we need somebody that has a vision of what the field needs and can figure out how to take this big bundle of all these technology ideas and make it work. And so that's part of, they said it's critical to our future, and so they're both developing for him as well as they're expecting him to help shape the organization. They're taking this guy from being a big division manager to CIO, and then probably over to lead the organization. But I thought it was an interesting shift, the importance of that change. Personnel-wise, you guys have all addressed it. Not only is it hard to find folks, one way to counter that is to, many folks say, you've got to really, really figure out how to maximize what you're getting from the people you have. And because the folks you have are probably better than anybody you're going to be able to hire tomorrow. The folks you have are the bird in the hand, and so we've got to figure out how to manage, train, lead, develop the folks you have. And so no longer are we going to A, B, and C players and figuring out how to get rid of the C players. Now we're saying we've got to take these C players and make them B players. How do we do it? That top grading methodology from years back, it kind of doesn't work in this market where we're starving for folks. I love the way, I think you said, we're looking for trainable people. That's kind of where I give us some clay and we'll shape them, which requires organizations like all of yours to have a training organization or training resource. We need the people dedicated, the thoughts dedicated to it, because we've got to make the most we can out of the people we have. So, look, at another question that I kind of had early is, what are your expectations from the equipment managers and some of the managers working for you? I mean, so it's tough for us, but it's probably just as tough if we can't establish clear direction for our organization. It's probably even tougher for the folks working for us. And so I'm kind of curious across the group, what are your expectations for the managers working for you? Ken, what are your expectations? I mean, you lead a large organization, a ton of capability. What are your expectations for some of the equipment managers or even some of the parts, et cetera, managers that work for you? What are your expectations of them today?
The expectation is ongoing training. The expectation is any of our managers, any of our supervision are to act as mentors for folks that are coming into the industry. Right now, I'm running a ratio of about 27% of my shop people are apprentices, either first, second, or third year. And also, we've reached out to, so we take part in a rapid access program where we actually bring in high school kids that are interested in becoming mechanics and technicians. And so we've got one of those kids now being mentored over in our transport division, so that we're getting that young group of people interested early on. And the key is to have your managers and your supervision mentoring and not being afraid to share knowledge. In fact, it's an expectation that we open up all of the black boxes and share everything, because the sharing of knowledge is power, and that makes us as an organization one of the ones that people want to gravitate to, because we're not afraid to invest in people and training.
Back to the old days of, like, if you have information, you've got control, so hoard it. That's a total 180. Like, let's share the information so that more people can get up to speed and more people can make good decisions. That's wonderful. Todd, what are your thoughts on your expectations of the managers working for you?
I guess ours is led from the top of our company, and that's our owner, and he is a big believer in training. Train, to have everybody that tries to offer and be able to support our customers with world-class equipment support from A to Z, from the time they buy the machine all the way through the process of service agreements and parts and taking care of things for people. And we run a little bit of a consensus out there, checking with customers to see how we're doing. And whenever we do have an issue, we try to jump right on it and be proactive and take care of problems. And, we even have one person on staff within our company that travels around to help support our technicians to be on the cutting edge of problems. And I think that's a big thing, supporting the customer from A to Z with any issue or problem that they may have, up front and open and honest. And if we have a problem, we try to be honest with it. And I think that goes a long ways. I wish back through my years I've looked at people who have tried to push things underneath the carpet, and they've had problems with equipment. They've not willingly admitted it, and it really causes a lot of problems. But to offer a world-class support system, I think, is our goal as a company, is all of our managers. And they hold me to that accountability, too, to make sure that my job is to make sure we have the tools to do that. Thank you.
Thanks, Todd. You mentioned the word led by the owner, who's probably been a phenomenal leader to create a culture around these things. So it's almost an expectation. And so we want to take some of those lessons learned and apply them to each one of our equipment. The sphere that you can influence, some of you, is your shop and the folks that work there and the culture of that shop. and that takes great leadership. There's a whole lot of study on how do you shape that culture. What are some of those behaviors and traits? What are some of those rituals that your organization does that's different, that reinforces that culture? And that's wonderful what you said is we're so customer focused. The internal equipment shops to companies that have that same feel as an external equipment, a rental organization, a leasing organization, or an equipment company like Leslie Equipment. That's a transition, but it's a phenomenal culture to have. So pretty cool. Latest stats on training is many organizations are budgeting about $2,500 per person a year for training, and that's just hard costs. There's a ton of other many of our companies I'm trying hard to get them to measure as a key performance indicator how much training does each person get per year, and continue to raise that. 32 is don't think of the OSHA stuff. Go outside of OSHA on. But 32 hours is probably about the average for training for each person. And so how do we continue to raise that? Because we have to. I mean, we have to budget that time, the expenses, as well as make sure we're helping our people. The cool thing about all that training stuff is our new generation, Generation Y, expects training. The 20-year-olds come in that we're attracting, or we're trying hard to attract. They want to see training programs. They want to see development programs. They're expecting those things. And so there's a generational shift from some of you guys here that might have gray hair, pictures with you in gray hair, where it was go get it and make it happen yourself often. The shift to this new generation is they're kind of looking for development programs. And so there's a lot of good that can be found. Paul, what are your expectations of some of the managers around you over at Hallbreaker?
Well, it's definitely evolved over time. The managers have always been expected to be aware of cost and uptime on equipment. And then as times changed here with the struggle for manpower, then the expectations, not only do they have themselves a personal development program to continue to grow and become more valuable to the company, but develop manpower underneath them. And so that's been a constant movement. On last year, we've definitely had a movement on health, environmental, and safety, and working through those issues. That's kind of a new hat that has been pushed down to the equipment managers in the last few years here to become more responsible. And it goes back to where you spoke earlier in our seminar that we're now required to understand the process of more than just fixing equipment all the way down through. And in order to have the health, environmental, and safety, understanding how the equipment is being repaired, that hat has been pushed down to the managers.
Well, the operations side of the business used to always struggle with, do you want me to be productive or do you want me to be safe? And we see that sometimes as well in equipment shops and groups. Do you want me to be productive or safe? And the expectation now on the operations side is yes.
And the answer is always yes.
Yeah, you have to be both. Yeah, and the demands for safety are through the roof now, and it's probably a good thing. I mean, for a while, as we as an industry transitioned, it was very painful, and we complained that had to wear. I remember guys complaining they had to wear the safety vest, and they said they'd get more hurt wearing the safety vest than if they didn't wear it, climbing out of vehicles and such. And now, like, I'll hold a workshop internal to a company, or we'll have a session to kind of figure out a better process to do something, and we'll get a bunch of equipment operators wearing that. They don't take it off from when they wake up in the morning till they go home at night. I wonder if they wear their vest eating at the dinner table. But it's kind of become an integrated function, that health, environment, and safety. You mentioned health on the big industry side. Outside of our construction industry, because of healthcare costs and the new structures, that now is becoming, how do we get to a healthy weight? How do we stop smoking? It's now become even more important outside of our industry, and we're starting to see it creep into our industry as well from the health side. So that's awesome. I appreciate, Paul, your thoughts on that. The next thought, there's this whirlwind day-to-day that we're all faced with, but it seems like there's a watershed of information. There's so much information available to all of us. It's pretty overwhelming. There's a major general, or a general recently talked about that information fatigue he felt was a challenge to leadership. How are you guys keeping up with the vast amount of information and change in our industry? What are you guys doing to keep up with that? Ken?
I guess constantly researching, looking what's new, what's out there, networking with other folks, other equipment managers that are in the industry to see what's new and exciting, what's changing. It's ongoing, and anywhere that you can get that information, from the AEMP conferences, networking with fellow CEMs, talking to other guys that are trying new things in the industry, staying apprised of what's going on within our own company as things evolve within our organization, and dealing with the manufacturers, going to factory tours on what's new, what's exciting. So it's never ending.
Yeah, I think it's a challenge, and there's so many different ideas and a bunch of data and information out there. Todd, what do you do to kind of keep up with it all?
It would probably be a lot of the same things he said. A lot of research and reading, online training. We do resource the AEMP for up-and-coming new technology, construction equipment magazine, along with a few others. And then, you got to kind of stay up with what some of the things that you're buying, too. We buy service trucks and pickup trucks, so you got to stay up with the technology of the items that you're buying for support equipment as well. So we kind of utilize about anything we can get our hands on for any kind of local training or online training that's available out there. And AEMP provides conferences twice a year that are world-class support. That's what they're for. They're for us to keep this equipment running.
Well, it's certainly an investment in time. And hey, you mentioned the AEMP. One thing, working around the industry, I don't know exactly who competes with who, but our company CEOs are often run into competitors. It seems like at the AEMP and at the conferences, we're peers, and sharing ideas of how to implement ideas or implement things better is what we're all about. So I've always found it comforting to be in a group of folks that are, even the board at the AEMP, I mean, the group there, from when I started, get to know them. I mean, they're open to share ideas for the good of the industry and for the good of supporting each other. And I always thought that network is pretty strong and very valuable. Paul?
Well, it's a tough road to hoe after those two guys hit most of the objects here. Probably just throw in that with the new technology, we find it more often than not that what you read that is published and what the vendor that walks through your door says they can do for you does not come easy without great pain, trying to turn their data into information and usefulness. It appears that a lot of the technology out there today are looking for contractors to buy their technology, then use them as a beta site to develop it on our nickel. And we've went through our struggles and pains this year trying to bring that technology on. And like I said, the rest of the guys hit most of the areas to find it. We don't have a problem finding it. Sometimes it finds us, but trying to make it integrated into our system is our issues.
Yeah. Actually, creating the change to get the value promised out of it, that's really hard, and it takes a huge investment of time. There's a ton of change theory out there on how we change organizations and how we implement something like that. But one of the best upfront techniques is to recognize how much time and money, and the time usually comes first. How much time is this really going to take? What's the impact on the organization? And then kind of budgeting that, and that's something that few of us actually are able to do. Is think that through and then execute that way. Come out with a development or an implementation plan. It's very time intensive. There's probably every organization must be looking at 20 or 30 great ideas that they want to implement, and they kind of have to pick the most critical to them. So, thanks, Paul. Last question I had, and then we might go to one or two questions that we've gotten from the audience that haven't been addressed yet. The last question I have is, how would you guys define a world-class fleet? I know some of you have applied for and won the Fleet Master competition, so I thought that we do. I thought it'd be really cool. You guys have a phenomenal perspective. How do you define a world-class fleet? Ken, what are your thoughts?
I guess from my perspective, a world-class fleet is a well-aged, balanced fleet, i.e. not everything is brand new, so it doesn't all wear out at the same time. So ideally strive to, currently The fleet I manage is cranes and heavy transport. So ideally, try and maintain an average fleet age of 5 to 6 years on that gear. Look at the kind of the best-in-class manufacturers for specific makes and models of equipment. Again, you're going to end up with a mixed fleet because there's no one manufacturer has a silver bullet on everything. There's definitely a lot of good equipment out there these days. Again, a mixed fleet, which having a mixed fleet from different manufacturers does tend to be a little more challenging because, again, that knowledge base of your personnel needs to be greater. But if you work with the various manufacturers, getting strong ties with the factory service department, and local dealers as well. I mean, they're key. Obviously, that age-old equipment triangle. The local dealers are paramount in helping out as well. So it's again, there's no silver bullet. So it's the age and a solid mixed fleet, and look for quality equipment, quality suppliers, and do your research. Don't buy the first one off the gate because a prototype can be problematic.
Yeah. Thanks, Ken. Todd, what are your thoughts on what a world-class fleet management program or a fleet looks like?
World-class fleet on our end is providing a really good equipment at a low cost to our customers. And what I mean by that is not always are we the cheapest up front, nor are a lot of people, but providing a good support program, a good PM program. And something recently we've done and we're pretty proud of is we're probably one of the larger rental fleets in the country that we're providing PMs on. It's basically a program called Ultimate Uptime that we provide to our machines, that when a customer rents a machine, they rent it, they grease it, they fuel it, we maintain it. All the machines are under warranty, under extended warranty, and they're maintained very well. And we monitor those machines hourly and daily. And when there are issues with the machines, a lot of times we call the customer and we know about a problem before maybe they've even noticed it, sitting in the seat. And that allows us time to troubleshoot and bring out the right parts and come out, and fix that machine and not cost any downtime to the customer. So that is probably what I'm going to say is our biggest tribute to low cost and product support is providing really good equipment, really good support that people want to do business with us because we strive for that. And it makes for more value down the road when a customer wants to purchase a piece of equipment that the machine has been maintained and has records, and every service of PM has been done under specific guidelines to the manufacturer. So that's something over the last year I think we've worked hard on to provide a better low total cost to our customers.
Yeah, thanks. And your current title looks like your perspective is huge, and the company's recognize it and put you in a position to share that message. That's awesome. That's great. Paul, what are your thoughts on that world-class question?
Well, the world-class fleet, I don't think that immediately, I think a lot of our minds go to how large the fleet is, and even though at our company here we have over 5,000 pieces of equipment, I don't believe that you need to have a large fleet to have a world-class fleet. The goal is to give a safe, productive, cost-efficient piece of equipment so that whoever's using it can be competitive in the industry, worth whatever they're using that piece of equipment for. It's an extension of them. In being a privately owned company, and I think Ken hit it earlier about upgrading your fleet and keeping your fleet newer, we're also worried about our capital net worth. So we got to be able to watch the financial end and the business end of our fleet and make sure that the capital net worth of the company is either growing or staying the same. We don't want to have a whole bunch of wore-out equipment that doesn't give our companies the position to finance if needed to in the future. Yeah. In saying all that's easy to say, and if you don't have a program to prove it, to track it, to measure it, and to set benchmarks, I don't believe that you could ever prove or say that you do have a world-class fleet. So having the data is the most important thing. And at the end of the day, you cannot improve what you can't measure.
Yeah. No, thanks, Paul. It's the concept of safe, reliable, cost-effective. It's an extension of the operators. They could be competitive is a huge perspective. One of the board members chimed in and kind of said, "Hey, my 2 cents. Worldclass is a fully optimized fleet that operates in the most safe, cost-effective, reliable levels and available levels." And Great PM is the backbone of fleet management programs. And so I thought that was pretty cool. Cool. It kind of came in. We've got question for one more question, and we'll wrap up quickly. But one of the questions that came in, I thought this group can wrestle with is, I think it's Chris stated, what are your thoughts on strategies and pros and cons on having in-house shop versus outsourced PM and repair? And I thought that was a neat. Outsource is a component we simply talk about outsourcing. I've seen it very extreme to complete outsourcing. One of my favorite clients, about $20 million company in revenue. But he said, look, my expertise is construction. My expertise is not equipment management. And there's great equipment management dealers and other companies here that can do that for me. Why would I try to beat them at that? And so that's his, and he takes a very extreme approach, and it's been successful for him. And I've seen others that have managed it all in-house without insourcing anything, and they've been very successful with that as well. So I'd be curious what the group thinks on, again, thoughts on pros and cons of in-house shop versus outsourced PM and repair. Ken, what do you see, and maybe if you're able to share, what does Sarah's do?
We try and minimize our outsourcing. We try and perform most of our work in-house if at all possible. Just the charge-out rates from some of the shops, something as simple as a small automotive repair shop. You go from here in Edmonton, where it's about $120 an hour, up to Fort McMurray, where it's in excess of $200 an hour. So it's crazy. So it's a lot cheaper for us to have our own technicians to do as much as possible. When I first got here, we were spending probably $300,000 to $400,000 a year just on outsourcing basic things, and the fleet size at that point was just north of 30 cranes. Right now, this year, we're targeting probably less than 40 or 50,000, and our fleet size will be just on the crane side 100 plus cranes. So we try and minimize here just due to the costs of outsourcing. Now, in a previous life, when I was working for Bechtel, we outsourced probably 60% because we had a very decentralized way of storing our equipment, so we relied heavily on outside vendors to do a lot of the rework and rebuilds in that particular form because it cost too much money to move everything back to the main shop to do the work. So there's pros and cons to both sides of it. So you've got to look at the economics. You've got to look at the availability of quality suppliers, quality people that are going to maintain the same level of repair that you expect, and people that you can trust, especially if it's a long distance repair. So again, communication, that equipment triangle coming back to where you trust the suppliers, you get sanity checks from the manufacturers. There's no silver bullet.
Yeah. So you've seen almost two different perspectives as well. Wonderful for very large fleets. Todd, you come from a different perspective as well, and your last job, you might be able to share some perspectives, pro and con. What do you think, Todd?
I think a lot of it depends on how much equipment that you have in your fleet that's specialty equipment. Finding people to, pull a head off of an excavator, resell a head or something, about any vendor can do that. But, if you're running a big majority of specialty equipment, shoring equipment, and hammers and hydraulic equipment and specialty equipment, there's just not people out there that support people to handle that. Now, if you're running a fleet of dozers and scrapers and excavators, then probably a lot of the dealers can handle that, and you can outsource a lot of that. But I think some of the companies, which would not be like a site development related company, people that work in various locations and they have a lot of this very technical support equipment, I don't know how they could do without having some of their own specialty people to take care of these products. You know, like I said, it just depends on, I think there's many different facets to that, and I think you just have to do what fits you best. And part of your company, your fleet of Ford pickup trucks, so to say, it may make sense to outsource all of them to local repair shops. But, you know, to have anybody that can work on GPS systems and heavy hydraulic hammers and such like that, it's going to take some specialty people that have to be highly trained.
Some knowledge and skills, yeah. Great, thanks. Paul?
Kind of with Ken there, the cost effectiveness of going totally out of house seems to be extreme when you're working with some of the dealers that if you do the math and they're charging you $3 a mile and $110 an hour, the average mechanic's truck travels 40 miles per hour, so they're charging you $220-something just to get to your job. So we do about 95% of our own repair and maintenance and PMs here. The other 5% comes out of risk and warranties. If we are working on something that we feel is a risk of a re-failure or needing the warranty, we'll go out of house. Obviously, if we cannot find our own personnel or don't have enough employees to do it, we go out of house. And if we're getting into something very technical or something new, state-of-the-art, we usually go out of house to a vendor plus put one of our guys with them to get the on-site training while we're working with them. So it's a mixed bag. I think it's not an easy line to draw in the sand to say which way to go. I think it comes down to the situation you're in.
Awesome. Thanks, Paul. I kind of want to wrap up and listen. I think the was a phenomenal discussion. I appreciate the panel volunteering their time. Again, thanks a whole lot to Link Belt for being sponsored, AEMP for hosting this. I know we're all looking forward to meeting up in Cleveland. I owe you guys a beer for volunteering. Here it is, October 6th through 8th in Cleveland. Sharon, do you have any closing comments or any ideas you want to throw out before we close the webinar?
First of all, I'd like to thank our panelists today. Paul Kitko is the Vice President of Equipment Operations at Glen Hawbaker. I had that incorrect on our page, and I just wanted to make sure that correction was made. Todd Perrine is with Leslie Equipment. Ken Burke is with Saren's Group. And Jim Shug of FMI. Thank you so much for being here today and running this panel discussion for us. And I'd like to thank all of our attendees for joining us today and to extend an invitation to everyone to explore our website and find out more about what the Association of Equipment Management Professionals has to offer, including professional credentials that show that you know what you know as an equipment manager, continuing education that is relevant to current industry best practices, the opportunity to meet and interact with other professionals in equipment management, and the chance to share your experience and knowledge to continue improving the equipment management industry. Our association is growing internationally. We have just completed a Spanish translation of our Career Equipment Fleet Manager Manual. We are also publishing a new manual on choosing and using telematic fleet management systems. These manuals will be available soon as e-books and in-print versions. We will soon have the English version of the CEFM manual available as an e-book as well. I'd like to thank Link Belt Cranes, our sponsor for today's program, and thank you all for attending. We hope you'll join us at our next conference event, the Asset Management Symposium, presented in conjunction with AEM's Customer Support Program, October 6th and 8th, 2015, at the Westin downtown in Cleveland, Ohio. Registration information for this and other upcoming events is available on our website, www.aemp.org, or you may call our office at 970-384-0510, and our staff will assist you. Thanks so much for being here, and have a great day.